On Tech News Today, more news and analysis from the CES show floor today, plus Silicon Valley VCs are looking to disrupt the marijuana industry. And why is Google Search losing market share? We'll tell you all about it on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, January 8th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great-tasting snacks right to your door. Start snacking smarter with wholesome, delicious treats like blueberry Greek yogurt pretzels. To get your complimentary NatureBox sampler, visit naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. Tech News Today is a show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan, and with us as our co-anchor today is NPR reporter Elise Hugh. How you doing, Elise?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well. Now, Elise, I'm confused about something, and I think you can clarify all this for me. Everybody is suddenly talking about selfie sticks. They've been around for a while, and everybody seems to be chattering about these things. What the heck is going on? Why are people talking about selfie sticks?
Yeah, and some date these selfie sticks back to the jazz age, so they've been around longer than we've even sort of seen this iteration. But the holiday season was a big time for selfie sticks, and they've finally invaded American shores. You know, we had seen them in Asia for a while. In Europe, they were popping up all over the place in tourist hotspots, but now you can find them in Times Square and in other places here in the U.S., and you know how we Americans can be a little myopic about these things, so it's kind of a new thing for a lot of folks here in the States, and they're selling really well. So despite sort of all the derision, it seems like people want them.
It seems to me like the most disturbing element of this is a product called the Selfie stick, which is a selfie stick for taking a selfie from the back. I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm seeing this story as well. It kind of bends like in a weird way. And anyway, it's I actually have a selfie stick. I bought it back when they were called monopods. And I don't know. I don't really use it anymore. It doesn't really fit my iPhone 6 Plus. But yeah, it's, you know, we are a narcissistic people, I guess, and we want to take pictures of ourselves. What are you going to do? Got to have the right hardware. Let's jump into the news. It's day 3 of the International CES show in Las Vegas. Twit's own Father Robert Ballecer is there and joins us from the Sands showroom. How you doing, Father Robert Ballecer?
I'm pretty good. I'm sitting here amidst all the robots and the 3D printers, and I'm just kind of in geek heaven.
That robot behind you looked like it's going to suddenly flip out and crush everyone within reach. So I hope that you are a safe distance away. Let's talk about some of the big trends that are going on there. Of course, we've seen growing momentum behind both virtual reality and augmented reality, and I think the two are kind of merging into one sort of pseudo-reality. What are you seeing there at CES around both virtual and augmented reality?
Well, this giant killer robot behind me, I'm at the ABB booth, is actually a really good example of augmented reality. This is like a selfie stick for virtual reality. This screen is actually tracking around the real world, and then it's showing you a window into a virtual world. So, you know, it's like the merging of virtual and the real. But on the more consumer-oriented sense, yesterday we stopped by the Razer booth, and they had an announcement about joining the open source virtual reality group. They've got a $200 kit, a hacker kit, that is basically going to give everyone, all the makers, all the DIYers, access to not just the software, but the hardware to create their own VR/AR-enabled applications. So very exciting time for people who are working with VR.
Father, it seems like last CES and the CES before it, we've been talking about 3D printers and 3D scanners. What's different this year? Is 2015 the year they're finally going to take off and become more mainstream?
Yeah, it was, I think, just 3 years ago that everyone thought that 3D printers were going to take the world by storm, and it didn't really happen. Prices have come down, the quality has gone up, but still, 3D printers tend to be a bit clunky. Unless you're really good at what you do and you can CAD, if it's a 3D printer, it doesn't just print. You have to give it instructions. I think what's going to change the game are the advent of inexpensive and very precise 3D scanners. That's going to give you the ability to scan an object and then, with a minimum amount of knowledge of how CAD programs work, modify that object and reprint it. I think that's going to be the cornerstone moment for the 3D scanning / printing market, and that we're right in the middle of it.
Now, Padre, the buzz in TVs right now is resolution. Of course, most of us don't even have 4K TVs yet. At CES, we're seeing 4K, 5K, and even 8K TVs, which is great. You know, the more Ks, the merrier. But where's the content? How are they going to sell these devices if there's nothing to watch on them?
Mike, that's a perfect question. That's exactly what people are asking. Right now, there's a battle between 4, 5, and even 8K. There's a couple of show vendors who have 8K monitors or arrays, and they're beautiful. They're nice. I mean, I'm not going to lie. If you go up to them, the picture is vivid, and especially if it's got a curved screen, it's immersive. But as you said, there's no content for it. There are a few channels that are giving you 4K content over the internet. There's a few sources of 4K content, but most of it is upsampled. So until that actually becomes the norm, those 4K, 5K, 8K screens are just going to be beautiful showpieces. Now, what has me very excited, and this is for the consumers, is with the battle going on at 4, 5, and 8K, 2K screens have basically reached parity with 1080p screens. So by the mid-year, you're going to see 2K, so that's 2560 by 1440 screens at the same price as a good quality 1080p screen. That's where I think the battle is going to happen, because 2K content we can get very easily, and people can actually film it and have their own content on these beautiful high-definition screens that maybe aren't 4 or 5K, but are still much better than 1080p.
Father, you've got to talk to us about the Elio. Our producer, Jason, is super excited about this car. Tell folks who don't know a lot about it what it is and why all the excitement.
This is the American people wagon. This is the American people car. So the idea is they looked at what you needed for a car, and then they tried to take everything out of it. They tried to make it safe. They tried to make it performance-wise good for its price, but they didn't want it to be costly. What they came up with is a $6,800 car. It's a three-wheeler, one in the back, two in the front. It sounds funny, but if you sit in this thing, especially the version that they showed off this year, it's actually really comfortable. It's really nice. It's a two-seater in tandem. It gets 84 miles per gallon on the highway. It gets 49 miles per gallon in the city. You can get it with a Navi package that makes it fully decked out. So it's an internet car, which means that we'll report its health to whoever needs to know. It will tell you when it needs to be changed. It's got an entertainment system. It's one of these things that I think tinkerers will take to heart, especially since the crashworthiness of the vehicle seems to be showing that you can make a small vehicle that's as safe or safer than a large vehicle and far more efficient.
Padre, when can we buy that car?
It's not like Kickstarter, but they do pre-orders right now. They create them in their factory in I want to say Indiana. I know it's out west somewhere, out east. If you go to ElioMotors.com and you put in a pre-order, I do believe they are actually delivering, and you could try the future.
Wonder if they have overnight delivery. Okay, one last thing. Internet of Things, home automation. Which is winning out there at CES?
I think the honest answer is neither and both. The Internet of Things is home automation. Home automation is the Internet of Things. This idea that I can connect everything. All the announcements that we've heard this year, both from NVIDIA and Intel and all the major connectivity vendors, has shown that they want to put a chip in everything. Now, they haven't figured out the rules yet of what needs to be able to talk to what. They haven't figured out what operating system is going to dominate them all. But especially here in the Sands, I can just throw a rock and hit 5 different vendors who are offering you network-controlled locks and windows and doors and lights. Now, I think the winner, this is going to be surprising, is not going to be Apple, it's not going to be Samsung, it's not going to be LG, who have all thrown their hat into the ring. Right now, the winner is Belkin. Their Wemo modules are inexpensive. People are buying them by the bushel. And get this, they're working on modules that will allow the Wemo to talk to other modules, other Internet of Thing objects, and other home automation devices. So, who would have known it? Belkin's going to run your next smart house.
Well, if you do throw rocks there on the show floor, video or it never happened. You know what I'm saying? Father Robert Ballecer is a host on This Week in Enterprise Tech, Know-How, Coding 101, and Padre's Corner. You can see them all at twit.tv. Thank you so much for joining us, Father Robert. All right. Well, in just a sec, we're going to hear what Silicon Valley is investing in next. But first, I want to tell you about NatureBox, our favorite subscription snack service. We love healthy snacks from NatureBox here at TWiT. And right now, you can get free sampler box. You just pay $2 for shipping. That's all you pay. And you get to try some of their delicious snacks. NatureBox has hundreds of delicious snacks. We love them here, as I said. And they have all kinds of flavors like orange apple fruit chews or Parmesan garlic pops or jalapeno cashews. All kinds of nuts and dried fruits and fig bars and all, they're so good and so delicious that when you want a snack, you're going to be eating real food, not empty calorie junk food. And of course, one of the great things is that no matter which snacks you get from NatureBox, they've got 0 artificial flavors, 0 artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners, 0 grams of trans fats, and no high fructose corn syrup. You'll even find snacks with no added sugar and gluten free. And so, you're going to want to have these snacks. Of course, here at the TWiT Brick House, we have them all of the time. Yesterday, I was just telling Jason that we were watching the Inside TWiT show, and I was munching away on some fig bars. They are so delicious, and it's also satisfying because if you eat empty calorie junk food, you're going to get hungry faster. If you eat real nutritious food, then you're going to be satisfied, and you're going to get healthier, and that's just the bottom line. Start your trial today and get a complimentary sampler box at naturebox.com/TWiT. Stay full, stay strong, start snacking smarter. Go to naturebox.com/TWiT, and we thank NatureBox for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Elise,
Mike, speaking of nature.
Yeah, nature, yeah. What sort of nature is Silicon Valley investing in now?
Well, former PayPal founder Peter Thiel is becoming marijuana's first big investor. His Founders Fund is the first institutional investor to put money into this nascent cannabis industry, which is still illegal in most U.S. states for recreational use. And to join us to talk about it, we have Shannon Bond from the Financial Times. Shannon, welcome.
Hi, guys.
So for tech investors, why get in on pot?
Well, talking to Founders Fund, they say their idea is investing in companies that they think are really going to change the world and in industries that are really dominant and grow fast. And there potentially isn't a bigger, faster growing industry right now than pot, partially because the legal industry is growing from zero.
Now, of course, Silicon Valley likes to disrupt things. What sort of disruption are some of the more high-tech cannabis sellers looking at right now? I know there's a lot of innovation, including in Canada, but what sort of innovation, what sort of disruption can we expect in this market?
Well, Privateer, which is the company that Thiel's fund is investing in, is pretty interesting. They have a bunch of different businesses. You mentioned Canada. They are producing medical marijuana in Canada, which is a huge opportunity there. They talk about it being like $1 billion business at some point. But they're also, they're quite diversified. And one of the big areas is accessories, because actually a lot of those things you can sell even in states where marijuana isn't legal. So they have they're launching next year this line with Bob Marley's estate called Marley Natural, and they'll be selling, in addition to cannabis in some areas where it's legal, they'll be selling bowls and pipes you can smoke out of, and branded clothing, accessories like that. And then they're also into information. So they have a site called Leafly, which is kind of like a Yelp for pot. It does online reviews.
And Shannon, I'm interested in the relationship between regulation and investment, or flipped, or vice versa, investment and regulatory changes. That is, how might big infusions of money or investments in a nascent industry actually affect legalization efforts in the states where it's not legal yet?
Well, that's exactly the argument that Privateer and Founders Fund are making. They're saying if you can create businesses, you can create brands that are seen as professionally run, as legitimate, with the backing of real players, real financial players, that's going to go a long way towards changing perceptions. And that does affect the regulatory process. If regulators feel like, okay, these are businesses that are being run, above board within the strictures that the states are putting out, that does make it easier for a bank to say, okay, we're going to do business with you. And they hope ultimately for the federal government to say, we're going to declassify pot as a Schedule I drug, which is how it's classified right now, so it's illegal.
I think it's reasonable to assume that the role of Silicon Valley investment dollars is going to be similar in the marijuana industry, the rapidly growing, as you mentioned, marijuana industry, as it did in the food industry. Essentially, it started out with ways to deliver food, and right now a lot of these startups are ways to deliver marijuana. And then it branched into Hampton Creek-like companies where they're starting to kind of rethink the product itself. Do you think we're going to expect in a few years, we can expect in a few years, new sort of ways to use engineering to engineer better pot?
Absolutely. You're actually already seeing that, both with the kind of strains that become available. I mean, people will say to you, this is not your father's pot. Like, you can kind of pick a strain that meets almost any need you might have, whether it's more for recreational use, whether it's for a sleep aid, or for other medical use. And then also there's a huge booming business now in pot that you don't smoke. So using inhalers, like more like vaporizers, kind of like e-cigarettes, or using edibles, topical creams. And so there's a lot of technology that goes into those products. So I would imagine that this kind of investment is just going to ramp that up.
And finally, Shannon, just how big of an investment is this from Founders Fund?
Well, they're not disclosing the exact amount. They're saying it's in the multi-million-dollar level, but it's part of an overall fund, a round that Privateer is raising that's about $60 million, plus they have a $15 million bridge loan. So, we can imagine it's probably a substantial chunk of change.
Follow Shannon Bond at ft.com and also on Twitter at Shannon Parel. I'm going to spell that for you. It's ShannonPareil. Thank you so much for joining us, Shannon.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Facebook wants to take on Google's YouTube in the battle for online video eyeballs. The company said in a blog post yesterday that newsfeed videos have more than tripled in the past year. Sarah Frier is a tech reporter for Bloomberg and joins us now. Hey, Sarah.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Now, Facebook said videos in news feeds have gone up 3.6 times, multiplied by 3.6 times. But they've also said the number posted by users has increased by only 75% globally and less than 100% in the United States. It sounds to me like most of the increase they're bragging about here in newsfeed video is caused by Facebook favoring videos in their filtering algorithms. Is that correct, or is it something else going on here?
It depends where you are in the world and how much you actually watch video. They'll give more videos to people who watch them. So, hey, maybe if you participated in the Ice Bucket Challenge, maybe you're on that list of people who are willing to watch video.
And how does Facebook video compare to the competition if we're talking about YouTube here? Like, how big of a behemoth is YouTube compared to Facebook video?
Well, Facebook is getting so much bigger, and the biggest differences come not in size, but in just how the videos are delivered. Facebook video starts out completely without sound, as you know, and you have to click on it to get the sound. It's also something that doesn't typically come as pre-roll before other content, whereas on YouTube, when you see a video advertisement, it might come before, if you want to watch a funny video. So it's very different. And the sharing aspect of it, I was talking to an analyst yesterday who said on Facebook, something can be big in the moment. It can go viral. But on YouTube, there's a link where it can live forever. So Facebook is more right away, you get the impact of having a video shared and commented on. And YouTube is something where you can go back and reference it and have all your videos in one place.
Another big difference between Facebook and YouTube in terms of videos is that Facebook wrecks the quality of video. I don't even post videos on Facebook anymore because it turns my beautiful HD videos into just garbage from the 90s. And yet YouTube supports 4K video. There's a huge qualitative difference between the video on each service. But does that matter? Do users even care about the quality of the video?
I uploaded a video once over Christmas. We were popping a bottle of champagne and it made a great sound, and the sound kind of changed. I see what you're saying there. It does degrade the quality, but you have to understand that Facebook is trying to make video work in such a way that it doesn't take newsfeed forever to load, and they're trying to make it work in some emerging markets and other places where the most important thing is the instant gratification of being able to click on something and see it play, or being able to scroll past something and see it play. So there are a lot of different things to balance here.
Sarah, how does Facebook's video strategy tie in with its advertising, its revenue strategy?
Video is going to be huge. They have a lot of people on a team trying to make this easier for advertisers. They want to make the user interface for advertisers to set goals for their videos, to track how well they're doing. That's one of their goals this year, is to improve that. They want to be able to explain to advertisers how they can work video into their other campaigns, maybe using the technology that Facebook has now. If somebody looks at a video, they'll be able to tell and follow up on that with an ad that's related to the video that they saw. So video maybe for branding, and then the ad later can be for pushing a sale.
Sarah Frier is at Bloomberg.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Sarah Frier. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, Elise, what is happening with Google's search market share? I'm getting concerned over here.
Well, it's still the search giant, but its share of the search market has taken a dip. It's the chosen search method now for 75% of users. That's actually a low for Google, because Firefox users have helped push Yahoo's search share to a 5-year high. Joining us to talk about it, this is Gregg Keizer from Computer World. So what's the effect on Google's bottom line here with this dip from about, 77, 78% of the market to 75% of the market?
Well, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask that question, because frankly, I was interested in it because of my coverage of browsers, Firefox, of course, and its maker, Mozilla, struck a deal with Yahoo for North America late last year, dropping, their global contract with Google. And at least in the U.S., where Yahoo is now the default, Yahoo has picked up quite a bit of share within the Firefox user community. But it's very hard to tell, at least at this point, whether it's going to impact long-term Google itself. I mean, those numbers come from an Irish metrics or analytics company that measures not search queries, but page referrals from search sites. So I think we really need to wait until more definitive numbers come out, perhaps from ComScore a little bit later this month, maybe next week, to see if they track the same. And of course, that Yahoo deal with Mozilla and Firefox is U.S. and Canada only. It's not global. So at this point, I would really hesitate to say it's going to have any impact materially on Google. It may.
Another threat, Greg, may be coming from the world of Apple. As more searches go to mobile and more mobile goes to Apple, they're really on fire right now with the iPhone 6 line. And increasingly, Apple's trying to squeeze Google out. They've swapped out Google on Siri, and it looks like they want to push Google out of the iOS platform altogether. The combination of browsers switching defaults as Firefox did, and major platforms, the alternative platform to Android, switching out and excluding Google to the greatest extent possible. I mean, it looks kind of grim for Google, at least in the United States. I know that in Europe and some other markets, their market share is enormous, way above 90%. But in the United States, it seems to be much lower, and they're facing the prospect of major drops from multiple areas. Is this overblown as well, or do you think that they're kind of in trouble in terms of their dominance?
Well, you're absolutely right in that the U.S. search is much more competitive than it seems to be in other regions, in particular Europe. That's really the basis for a lot of the conversations between governments and privacy advocates in Europe with Google. But the idea or the implication of Apple changing, at least according to the analysts that I chatted with back in December after Mozilla made this announcement related to switching to Yahoo, their take was that if Apple did drop Google, that would be much more of an impact than, say, Firefox or Mozilla, dropping Google and picking up Yahoo in the U.S. It all depends, they were saying, on whether Apple believes it would want to do this and push Google out of its ecosystem entirely, at the possible risk of alienating their customers and their users if the search that replaces Google is substandard or subpar. So they were telling me, and their consensus was that Apple would be unlikely, at least at this point, to drop Google. But that threat is obviously always there. Apple has, done some collaboration with Microsoft related to Bing. That's always a possibility.
And Gregg, this actually leads to my next question, which is if you could kind of step back for folks and explain why Mozilla decided to drop its partnership with Google, which had actually brought Mozilla plenty of revenue over the last few years. Why go with Yahoo and make this decision in November?
You know, Mozilla really didn't, in my mind, adequately explain or describe why they did this. And, you know, the supposition is that the money was better with Yahoo, wanting to, you know, get some edge, grow some share through a partnership with Firefox, even though its share of browser usage wide has really diminished in the past 12 to 18 months. Another possibility on Mozilla's end is that, you know, they were a little distrustful of Google because Mozilla has really been pushing on the privacy side to differentiate, you know, not only the foundation, Mozilla Foundation, which is the controlling organization for the company that actually makes the browser, but for Firefox as well. Those are two possibilities as far as why they did it. We really won't know until 2016 when they release their financials for the prior year, this year, as far as whether the money is the same or whether the money was more.
Gregg Keizer's at computerworld.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at @GKeizer. Thanks for joining us, Gregg.
Hey, thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
Right. We told you yesterday that audio equipment maker Monster has filed suit against Beats Electronics, claiming that Beats founders Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre conspired to separate the headphones brand from Monster before the $3.2 billion Apple acquisition. They did that, according to the lawsuit, by pulling a fast one with HTC somehow. That raised some questions in the mind of GigaOm's Keith Leswing, who joins us now to talk about it. Welcome to you, Keith.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, you wrote a column that said the Monster lawsuit raised 5 questions about HTC's role. But before we talk about those questions, can you briefly summarize what Monster is claiming in its lawsuit?
Well, Monster is saying that their initial deal with Beats fell apart when HTC bought 51% of the company in 2011, which allowed them to Beats to eject from their original deal with Monster. So that's how HTC comes in.
So when HTC got involved, did it do this knowingly? Did it know it was helping Beats actually wind up getting rid of Monster?
I don't know. I mean, you have to look at the Monster. Monster filed a complaint. You know, they're trying to make it look as bad as possible. But assuming it's true, assuming what they say, you know, isn't a pure fabrication, you know, there are a lot of questions about the HTC Beats deal. It was $309 million in 2011. And then in 2012, it sold half of its stake back and made a loss during a year where Beats doubled the amount of headphones it was shipping. So, you know, you really do have to wonder. But it's definitely not sure. There are also rumors that, you know, HTC was going to help Beats make a streaming service, you know, in 2012. And obviously that never came to fruition. It later became Beats Streaming Music, which now Apple owns. So there are just a lot of questions about how Beats is involved with this. And of course, you know, Iovine is a shark. And if Iovine, you know, sharked Monster, is it possible that Iovine sharked HTC? Yeah, it is.
Well, your second question was, and it was the big question that leapt out at me when we reported this story yesterday, which is that, you know, if HTC was instrumental and knowing in its sort of conspiracy, I guess, with Beats in this swapping around of investment or ownership, what did it gain? I mean, like you said, it lost a lot of money. There would have to be some huge payoff behind the scenes or something like that, which doesn't seem likely at all. And that's the aspect of this that makes this whole lawsuit sound completely bogus to me. It sounds like maybe there's an ego involved, that maybe Beats, you know, former partner Beats ran away with this huge acquisition, which we all kind of agreed was a lot of money for something that it wasn't really that valuable. But I mean, doesn't that just invalidate it on its face? I mean, you know, HTC, as you said, lost a ton of money. Now, how can they be a co-conspirator?
They didn't lose a ton of money. They unloaded their 51% share in two increments. First, they sold half of it back to Beats in 2012, and reportedly they made a small loss, $5 million. That one doesn't make sense to me. And then the second one, they actually made an $85 million profit, and that was in 2013. And that $85 million actually, when it went into the balance sheet, it tipped it from a losing quarter to HTC to a winning quarter to HTC. So it didn't lose money, but I mean, the HTC Beats products weren't compelling. There were a couple phones, and the phones really didn't make a big splash. One of the things that was a big part of the deal is that HTC was going to pack in earphones with their phones. And that only went one Christmas. That was, early 2011. By mid 2012, HTC was no longer including Beats in with their phones. And it's not like there was a LeBron James HTC/Beats ad. So it's really not clear about what HTC got from it. So, that is a pretty major question.
They didn't actually lose money, but they lost out on the sort of gravy train from the Apple acquisition. I mean, that's, if they knew all this was going to happen, they would have to have been insane to give up control. They would have hung on to it and been part of the, gotten rich from the Apple acquisition. And so, that's the part of it that doesn't make sense to me. They couldn't possibly have known that the Beats was talking to Apple, or that some, any sort of acquisition was coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. TechCrunch wrote, and this is simplistic because probably Apple was not going to touch Beats if HTC was involved. But, if that 51% stake in Beats Electronics was, $1 billion plus, which HTC could really use.
So, Keith, what's next in this fascinating legal drama?
More legal drama. I'm sure that all the parties involved are going to rebut, and then it's going to see whether it's actually going to go to trial. But if it does, if it actually does go to trial, I'm really interested to see what HTC is going to say about its role and what the events were that triggered it divesting from, this company that it took a 51% stake in.
Yeah, we'll get some popcorn and we'll be watching this trial when it finally hits the courtrooms. Keith Leswing is at gigaom.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Keith S. Wing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. A couple of quick updates for you. Samsung Electronics reported that fourth quarter operating profit will probably drop 37.4%, and that it suffered its first annual profit decline since 2011. They're still making a lot of money, Elise, but it sounds like Samsung has kind of lost its touch. What do you think?
Those Chinese-made phones are really gaining ground, as we're seeing at CES. A lot of these Chinese phone makers are selling their phones for half the price of these Samsung Galaxies, and apparently they're working pretty well for folks.
Yep, and they're cheap. We reported recently on the coming introduction of the Sony PlayStation 4 in China, scheduled for January 11th. Now Sony is saying the launch has been delayed due to, quote, various factors, unquote, and that no new date has been set. It sounds like, at least that the Chinese government is giving them the runaround in terms of approvals. They've always been kind of weirdly touchy about gaming consoles, with Xbox just barely getting into the market recently, and now PlayStation being delayed here. So kind of a weird thing. And I think once they get into the Chinese market, it's going to take them a long time to gain any real traction, because, of course, it's massively expensive, far more expensive in China than it is in the U.S. There aren't a lot of games that the government has approved, just less than, a handful. And so it's an uphill battle for Sony in China, I think. Well, in other news, Silicon Valley's social networking company Twitter has gone all Hollywood on us, or at least they've won an Emmy. The company will receive an engineering Emmy award at CES today, having been chosen for innovation in improving engagement around television and social media. Yeah, no kidding. It's pretty much Twitter kind of owns the social media engagement around TV for the most part. How about you, Elise? When you're watching TV, when you're binge watching House of Cards, are you like on Twitter, like talking about it, or are you not one of those media multitaskers?
I like the second screen experience for appointment television. There's very little television that we watch kind of that way anymore, but I remember it being pretty engaging during Breaking Bad's final season. So everybody was actually getting together around their TVs on Sunday nights for those final few episodes.
Yeah, and of course, event television like that, or the Oscars, or the Emmys, or the Super Bowl, or whatever, is always a great time for Twitter engagement. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Geng in Bangkok, Thailand, who posted this picture on Twitter and said he listened to TNT while riding his Vespa to work in Sunshine City. I guess Sunshine City is an area in Bangkok. I don't know. I've never heard of it.
That's where I want to be right now.
Yeah, Sunshine. Yeah, it's not sunshiny here in Petaluma, although it normally is. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT and we'll find it. And that is the tech news today. Elise, Hugh, how can people follow your prolific writing and radio stuff?
You can hear me on our NPR program's Morning Edition or All Things Considered. Follow me on Twitter at Elise WHO.
Wonderful, and we will see you next time.
Great, thanks.
All right. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today via RSS, good old-fashioned RSS, or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. I want you to join our Google Plus community, our thriving Google Plus community. Just search Google Plus for Tech News Today. And yeah, come on in and sign up. Please send us your thoughts and opinions via email to tnt@twit.tv. You can also comment on Twitter or Google Plus using the hashtag Tech News Today, and we'll find that as well. Send email, as I said, to tnt@twit.tv, or you can call our voicemail at 260-TNT Show. Don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name's Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.